In today's video, we do have some further updates on the Jack Eichel trade situation coming from Elliotte Friedman. We also have some other trade talk from his newest blog, talking about players like John Klingberg, as well as Erik Brannstrom with the Ottawa Senators. What does the future hold for Evander Kane in San Jose? We have a potential suspension coming up for Pavel Buchnevich in St. Louis, and we have some news on the waiver wire and injury updates as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about today. Let's kick things off first with the news from the waiver wire. Nothing too substantial here. We had 4 players on waivers yesterday. 2 were for the purpose of for contract termination, where 2 were for being assigned. Nobody was claimed. No huge shocker there. So nobody's changing teams in that regard. So everybody clears. Today on waivers, we do have news that the Vancouver Canucks have placed forward Nick Petan on waivers for the purpose of assigning him to Abbotsford in the American Hockey League. Petan essentially is going to be scratched from the lineup, likely due to the return of Brock Besser. So we'll see if he sticks around in Vancouver or if he gets claimed. He's one of those players that hasn't really played a ton of NHL action, but has been considered kind of like a fringe player for a long time. So I'll be interested to see if anybody else gives him a shot. I wouldn't be shocked either way, to be honest, if he's claimed or if he goes through and remains in the Canucks organization. Now, when it comes to some quick injury updates, the Maple Leafs are going to be without Nick Robertson, who's already been assigned to the Marlies. But Nick Robertson, one of their top young prospects, is going to be out with a leg injury for approximately 10 weeks. He's certainly battled his fair share of injuries in his young career. So as the Maple Leafs go through the next couple of months stretch here at the NHL, don't look for Robertson to be a recall option should they run into any other injury scenarios with their NHL roster. Unfortunately, he's not going to be available. If you look at the 10-week time frame, that essentially puts us basically till around early in the new year. So another unfortunate bad break there for Nick Robertson. When it comes to Nikita Kucherov, we don't have an exact timeline on his, what his injury is going to be. I mean, obviously, based on the video replay, it looks like it's definitely likely groin related. Head coach John Cooper said it looks like it will be a longer term issue, but he does not expect it to be as long as what he went through last year, essentially missing the entire season, being ready for game 1 of the playoffs. There's already a lot of chatter, people complaining about circumvention of the cap, and it really isn't the case. But I know that there's a lot of people that don't like the loophole, and I don't completely disagree. But Kucherov is not expected to be out, at least at this point, for the remainder of the season. So it doesn't look like anything of that nature will be in play here. When it comes to Vegas, we know that the Max Pacioretty injury, which was originally being evaluated as going to be around 6 weeks, and the Mark Stone injury, they said it's a combination of either, in between day to day to week, so probably looking at about a week would be fair to say. Shouldn't be too long term. Week to week, usually sometimes can be 1 to 2 weeks, right? So if they said it's between day to day and week to week, we could probably estimate, 7 to 10 days at most. So that's not too bad, but Vegas will be without their top 2 wingers here for some time. And after a slow start to the season, that's certainly not going to be very helpful. As I mentioned before, you can't win the Stanley Cup in October. You can't make the playoffs in October, but you certainly can have your season have a big impact on whether or not you make the playoffs based on your play in October. Usually, the standings don't change a whole lot after the first month or so into the season. The Avalanche are finally getting Nate McKinnon back. He's gone through his 2 negative COVID tests, so he's ready and clear to be playing his debut for the Avalanche now. And Blake Wheeler, as I mentioned yesterday, is in COVID protocol, but apparently he is symptomatic. So I just wanted to wish Blake Wheeler some well wishes. Hopefully nothing gets too severe. Nate McKinnon said that essentially that he really didn't have much of anything going on. Clearly he said the vaccine worked well for him, and he barely even had anything at all. So certainly nice to hear a positive story like that. When it comes to Blues forward Pavel Buchnevich, it looks like he likely will be suspended. There is a pending hearing, which I'm not sure if that'll be completed by the time this video makes it to YouTube or not. But obviously in his recent game against the Arizona Coyotes, he was ejected for a headbutting against Coyotes forward Lawson Krause. Headbutting's a big no-no. Normally it does lead to suspension. I don't believe he's got any kind of history or anything that can really go against him in this regard. I know one situation that comes to mind back was, I think, Patrick Kaleta with Buffalo back probably 10 years ago or more. I think he got like 3 or 4 games, but he also had history and had prior warning. So I would just say probably 1 game, but I'm not really sure what's going to happen. Some are saying that this is really no different than Rasmus Andersson the other night in the Calgary Flames game, but actually it kind of is, because when Rasmus Andersson did the headbutt, he had his hand in front, and it wasn't like a real full complete headbutt. He did kind of go in that way, but Buchnevich did not have that. It was more of a full-fledged regular headbutt. So he's likely facing something. We'll have to wait word from NHL player safety on that front. And of course, some updates here on Evander Kane. Of course, it was announced yesterday that he's facing a 21-game suspension. That's going to mean that he's losing an average of $35,000 per day that he's suspended. That's going to be just shy of $1.5 million, which is a huge amount of money. During the suspension period, he does not count against the salary cap here. Of course, we didn't really get into it when the suspension was announced because it came out a little bit later. He did issue a statement through the NHLPA, essentially apologizing for his actions, apologizing to teammates, saying that he's going through counseling. He's going to continue to do so to hopefully move forward, and he plans on getting back on the ice at the end of the suspension, which would put us at the end of November. So there's a lot of questions now as, okay, we know what's happening with Kane. He's got a 21-game suspension for the invalid or passing off a fake COVID vaccine card. Okay, that's been dealt with. The other stuff has been thrown out, essentially. They said they could not substantiate any of the claims from the domestic abuse stuff. They had previously investigated him for the betting on hockey games accusations. That was ruled to be something that they couldn't verify either. So it seems like, as far as anybody saying they should void his contract, as much as he's made a lot of mistakes, and I can understand the sentiment, that looks like that's not going to be an option for San Jose. At this point, I know Elliot Friedman went on to say that the PA, the union, would certainly fight for him, which is their job, to protect him and obviously make sure his rights are upheld, that if he's not facing any other suspensions, that he should be allowed to play technically. So it's really difficult to say how that goes. I've seen Kevin Kurz, the athletic writer for the Sharks, recently ask, and I think there was other reporters involved, recent media scrums too, between head coach Bob Boughner and different teammates, asking about what's it going to be like for Kane to return and kind of get their thoughts and feelings on the situation. And one thing that was confirmed is it seems like nobody will confirm that they've actually spoken to him anytime recently at all. So, any teammate or coach so far that's been asked, they said no, they've had no communication with Kane in a really long time. And they won't really discuss what's going to happen when he comes back. It's all kind of say that that's at the ownership and management level, that they don't really want to get into it. They'll deal with it when it comes. It's kind of above their pay grade, so to speak. I don't really think anybody seemed overly enthused about it, but they're not really going to come out and say a whole lot. Friedman goes on to talk about the fact in his latest blog, he wonders if they will come to some sort of leave, whether it be paid or unpaid. Because I just don't know that the Sharks are really going to be able to welcome him back. A trade seems pretty much impossible, you would think, given his term, cap hit, and the drama that comes with it, the reputation, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't know that there's any appetite for any NHL team to really take that on. So that's going to prove to be extremely difficult. But you would think that maybe the Sharks would figure out some way to do an unpaid leave. I mean, I don't think there's any way they can get out of paying him after the suspension is over. Really, if he's technically able to play, unless they have some other reason that could come up, I guess, between now and then, and we don't know, that they could suspend him again for something else. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get around this, but there are, Friedman saying that there are discussions and speculation on the Sharks figuring out ways to not bring him back, but it's going to take some time to figure that out. Now, of course, one of the other things we're going to talk about today does have an impact on whether or not the Sharks have him on their cap as a hit or not, or if he's back or not as well. So stay tuned. We'll get into that here in a couple moments. But first, we need to pause for our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. Thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Into the trade rumor section of the video. Quickly here, a couple of tidbits from the 32 Thoughts blog that certainly seemed very interesting. I know he mentions Klingberg in the Dallas Stars, who's been getting some attention recently, was talked about on the 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada this past weekend. Essentially, the Dallas Stars and John Klingberg's camp have been in contract discussions for an extension. There's mutual interest for them both to want to keep him around in Dallas. However, as I've talked about in a few other occasions, the money is going to be tricky to make work. They already gave a mega contract to youngster Miro Heiskanen. They brought in some reinforcements, and you have to think that was insurance in case Klingberg doesn't get signed, like Ryan Suter and Hakanpää. Of course, they got Lindell, so they're not really thin on the back end. Of course, Klingberg's a good D-man now, so clearly they're not as good without him as they would be with him. But at the same time, you know, they have to be prepared here. Jeff Marek and Friedman both have reported that he's looking for an 8-year deal in that mid-$60 million range. So probably somewhere between $62 to $65 million. So that's going to have an average annual value of around 8 or either it's a smidge below or above $8 million a year. So when you look at Heiskanen's contract and what else they have on the books, that is a lot of commitment. They're going to have a very solid but yet very, very expensive blue line. And he also goes on to say today that he believes that the Dallas Stars have made their best offer. They've made it known that they've put their best offer forward, that they're not really going to be offering anything more than what's already been on the table. Now, what's on the table, we don't really 100% know. We only know what the rumor and speculation around what he's looking for. You have to think that it's less than what he's looking for or he would have signed, right? So clearly they're not too far apart is what the reports indicate here from Friedman, but at the same time, they're far enough that they're not able to bridge a gap as of yet, at least, and get a deal done. But you have to think, as I've talked about and all these guys have mentioned, if Klingberg's going to get a lot of attention here, if he's not signed soon, and certainly they're going to be getting a lot of calls in Dallas, especially if they're trending, as we get another month or two into the season, if they're not trending to be a playoff team, he'll likely hit the trade bait board for a lot of NHL insiders and really ratchets up the likelihood that he's going to be dealt. I know there's tons of teams that would probably love to have a shot at Klingberg on an expiring deal as a rental for a playoff run. So we'll have to continue to watch that situation. And another one that's mentioned here in the blog, which isn't a huge shocker, but it's the first we've heard of it in a little while, is Sens defenseman Erik Brannstrom, who essentially originally was kept in the NHL roster out of training camp, but then later demoted. Essentially, looks like he's kind of that number 7-8 defenseman with Ottawa right now. Looks like they don't want to play him and Mete both. And he's down playing for the Belleville Senators. And there's some rumblings that the Sens are getting calls on his availability since he's hasn't been able to stick consistently in the lineup over the past couple of years. Other teams are starting to wonder if they would welcome moving him to get him a fresh start and bring back a different asset that they might be able to better use. So really no guarantee that they're going to pull the trigger here. I think considering he was the main piece that came back on the Mark Stone trade, they would tread very carefully. They still believe, or at least it looks like they believe, that he can still be a player for them longer term. But of course, how much patience are they going to have with the development side of it before they do this? No guarantee they do it. It really depends on what the offer is, right? If they get a deal come through for an offer that's something that they really could benefit from, you have to think that there's a real chance that they might do it, right? We know they're looking for a forward. We've heard various reports from different reporters. I know even Mark Mathot was on Sirius XM radio today talking about the fact that the Sens clearly would like to have another another forward, preferably somebody who can play top 6 or top 9. And if that was offered for Brannstrom, maybe they would pull the trigger. It's still something they will look to do, even if Brannstrom's not involved, but he could be a piece to do that. So we'll have to see where things go. Personally, I think that's something they should be, careful and patient with. Like, it's not like they're, going for the Stanley Cup here or anything. They have a ways to go before they really become more serious contenders around playoffs and cup and all that. So I would tread carefully, because I think this young defenseman still has a lot of talent. But we'll see where things go. Now, with Jack Eichel. Now, when we want to talk about Eichel, he was a big focus on the 32 Thoughts blog today from Friedman, talking about the fact that he said the agents won't discuss it or comment on it, but he believes right now that Eichel is going from doctor to doctor to doctor. They're seeing as many doctors as they possibly can, because they're trying to build up a case of, obviously, for 2 reasons. One, they want other teams that are possibly interested in trade to have more evidence to suggest that this surgery he wants for the disc replacement is safe and appropriate. And they also want to build that case as well to the Sabres and to the PA if they have to go down the road of a grievance in case a trade doesn't happen soon enough, that they can show the evidence to support that disc replacement surgery is acceptable and it is a safe surgery, and that the way the latest CBA is crafted is not really meant to prevent medical surgery from being prevented if it's considered, a safe surgery, and the players do have some sort of medical choice. Ultimately, the team does have the final say, but it's not really meant to prevent players from getting the care they need. So they're trying to, obviously work their legal loopholes here and build a case that if they have to go down that road, that they certainly can do that. Now, on the latest episode, which was earlier today of the Jeff Merrick show, there was talk between Friedman and Merrick talking about the Montreal Canadiens. Are they a team that's involved? Friedman confirmed that they have been a team that's been involved in the Eichel sweepstakes, but not necessarily on a consistent basis. He's heard that they've been in and they've been out. They've touched base numerous times. Things never got too far, but he wonders with their slow start. They were talking about the possibility of, could the Habs get involved again, and could they end up maybe, consider doing this kind of trade. They talked a lot about the fact that Marc Bergevin is a lame duck GM in his final year. There's no real indication there's going to be an extension until after the season. So how is he going to proceed here? Is he going to be more cautious? Is he going to be more aggressive? Like, is he really going to try to, show ownership here that he ultimately needs to have, trying to, I guess, prove that he should be re-signed or increase his worth? Or how is he going to approach this, and how much will ownership be involved in these types of trades, knowing that he's, in the final year? You rather would have a GM making these major decisions that are going to be around for an extended period of time. And obviously, the price tag would be high. We know they're going to be hosting the upcoming NHL draft in 2022. So they're going to want to make sure they have enough picks to be, make a good splash at home in front of their fans. So they don't want to, totally farm out the future of this team. They have some good young players on the roster. They have some more that are on the way, still building up as prospects. Would Montreal really get involved here? I don't know what the asking price would be from the Buffalo Sabres, but you would have to think that between like Caulfield and Suzuki, that they probably would ask for one of those players. You would think, right? I mean, I'm not sure Montreal is going to want to go near that. I mean, they have some other young players, like even Romanov. Would they ask for Romanov? I can't imagine Montreal would be interested in moving him. If they wanted to add another real top goalie prospect, which they do have a few of now, there's Caden Primo in the minors. I'm not sure how crazy the Habs would be on that, but that's still another potential player there. And they have some other younger players as well. I mean, look through their roster right now. I mean, you'd have to think Suzuki, Caulfield, and Romanov would be the main players of interest if you're Buffalo, and then you'd have to throw in some prospects in picks. And Montreal still is pretty well positioned that way. They could probably put together a respectable offer, but I just don't know that they're going to want to really give up any of those young pieces. But we've seen Bergevin not be afraid to do this before, right? So it's really difficult to say. When teams have a slow start and they have a lot of confidence that they have enough pieces to right the ship here. But the thing is Eichel's not going to be an immediate help, right? There's the other thing that you have to factor in here. Anybody that trades for Eichel knows that they're not going to get him for about 4 months' time. By the time they make the trade, has the surgery, and gets recovered, if all goes well, you're looking at near the end of the year at this point in time. So, Montreal would have to battle themselves into the playoffs before it would even be a possibility. So, I guess we could see it's not even so much trying to right the ship and get him in there to help. It's more like if things are not looking good and we're likely going to miss, maybe we don't worry so much about playoffs this year and we go for the future and we add a real legit top, center iceman around the league. Imagine having, Suzuki and Eichel 1-2. Like, I can't imagine any circumstances where they trade Nick Suzuki. So you'd have to be looking at this going, if we have Eichel Suzuki 1-2, we're in awesome shape here. So maybe that's something that Montreal would consider doing. I'm not really sure, but hard to say what Bergevin's thinking with the start of the season. No contract. I personally don't think that the Habs are going to be big players here, but it's just interesting to think about and talk about as you look around. Because Friedman's mentioned here, he's like, there's bound to be teams that pop up that you just don't think of, right? And another one would be the San Jose Sharks. Like, I saw an article today from NBC Sports talking about the Sharks maybe getting involved in the Eichel sweepstakes, and that things look more and more likely that they could try to get in there. And a lot of it, though, dependent on the future of Evander Kane. If they found a way to move the Kane contract or have it voided, which I'm not thinking is going to be a possibility, but if they didn't have that cap hit and they could move on from it, then they could certainly jump into the mix with Eichel, because then they would be able to better afford that, because clearly the Sharks are trying to transition to a younger team with, more dynamic, trying to kind of change the culture, trying to change the, add younger pieces to the core group and things like that. And adding a guy like Eichel would go a long way to do that. It makes a ton of sense that they would consider that. We know Doug Wilson's not afraid to go for the big fish and really make the blockbuster trades. He's done it numerous times as his GM of the Sharks. But they would have to be able to move on from that Kane cap hit. And at this point, we don't have any real indication to suggest that that's going to happen. So to me, as much as that article from NBC Sports does make a lot of sense that they should be considering it, at the same time, I don't think they can really pull it off unless they move on from Kane. And that right now is a major question mark that I don't think we can answer. And as of today, doesn't look like a real possibility. So let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.